Okay, well, instead of a normal set of journal entries that would have been recorded in January, I just kind of took the month off from recording any journal entries in anticipation of finishing up this look with you at the questionnaire that I filled out as I was being considered by the current elder board for the role of elder to join them on the board. I filled out this questionnaire late October, maybe, or maybe November. I can't remember, somewhere around there. And it was all the current elders read it. It was the basis for discussion when they had me in for a formal interview. As I mentioned last time, I've been approved as a provisional elder. That status lasts for 1 year, and if there are no causes for concern on my end or on the elders' end of things, I will be made a permanent elder, and barring any kind of unforeseen situations, would remain an elder until I age out at 65. So it's quite the commitment for me to be considering, and you can check out last month's Pater's Brain installment for a little more information about that. So I wasn't able to finish sharing my responses to all the entirety of the questionnaire last time, so I'm getting to basically what amounts to about the second half of this. I think we'll get through this more quickly than last time. Last time took over an hour. But I think we'll go quicker this time. As a reminder, there are some things that I'm going to be leaving out. You might notice, if you're watching the video version of this, I'm recording this again differently than I normally do. Instead of on my phone, I'm recording using my normal kind of vlog type recording setup. And that's so that I can look at this digital document that I have in front of me more easily. But if you notice me kind of like hesitating or trying to on the fly, come up with words instead of just reading right off of my responses here. That's because, when appropriate, I want to leave out the names of anyone that I would be mentioning here in anything less than a positive light. There are no people in my responses here that have traumatized me or been horrible to me or something like that. But I just want to err on the side of absolute respect for anyone that I have mentioned in this document. Of course, with the elders, I didn't leave that out. I was very open with them because I knew that they would be able to take that and treat that with confidence. Not that you wouldn't, but anytime you're recording something and putting it online, who knows where it could potentially end up, and so I just need to be more cautious in this setting. But there's no dark trauma or dark secret sins or whatever, no need to try and read into things as though there's some big thing behind all of it. So going through, we're now into personal issues. The question is, in terms of your personality, briefly assess your strengths, including your spiritual gifts. I said, I think my primary spiritual gifting is to teach, and have received frequent affirmation of that over the years. I believe I am a deep, analytical, careful, and creative thinker, and able to consider unique angles that may not occur to others. I am introspective, and I think largely aware of my weaknesses. I seek to be conversationally confessional, aiming to be quick to share the problems and sins in my heart, and remain transparent. Assess your weaknesses. What is one you are painfully aware of? It would be hard for me to single out one over the others. I am slow to want to be around large groups of people and to attend social events. I have a tendency to avoid eye contact in passing with others, in an effort to dodge small talk or passing greetings, which I find awkward and uncomfortable. I have been fighting this tendency and improving over the years, but it remains a challenge. I avoid putting myself in situations that do not play to my strengths, or that might showcase my lack of skill. I have a tendency to care way too much what others think of me, but am also mentally judgmental of others. I am emotionally sensitive to personal criticism of myself or my work. This doesn't manifest in combativeness, but creates internal stress that can take days for me to process through, depending on the situation. I have grown significantly in this area since my time as a worship pastor, but it is certainly still an ongoing part of my life. I tend to avoid discomfort or pain and cling to my free time. I often wonder how much rest/leisure time is sufficient and appropriate for me, and how much is wasteful. I resist spontaneity and seek to control my circumstances through planning or worrying. I have a general fear or anxiety about anything that is unknown or uncontrollable by me. In terms of the qualifications of an elder in 1 Timothy 3, 1 through 7, in which are you relatively strong and in which are you relatively weak? Let me actually read those qualifications. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 7. In the ESV, that says, "The saying is trustworthy. If anyone aspires to the office of overseer, he desires a noble task. Therefore, an overseer must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, sober-minded, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not a drunkard, not violent but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own household well, with all dignity, keeping his children submissive. For if someone does not know how to manage his own household, how will he care for God's church? He must not be a recent convert, or he may become puffed up with conceit and fall into the condemnation of the devil. Moreover, he must be well thought of by outsiders, so that he may not fall into disgrace, into a snare of the devil." So the question is, in which are you relatively strong and in which are you relatively weak? And my response, I wrote, "I believe I am stronger in being able to teach and in being gentle. I am weak in the area of hospitality in terms of my disinclination toward it and how taxing I find it. However, I think I have some strength in executing on hospitality when I see purpose in it, and I do initiate it from time to time with a purpose in mind, despite it still being very taxing. I don't think I am a lover of money, but recurringly question and wonder about my love of the entertainment money can buy and the time I spend with it." Next, if you are married, answer the next 4 questions. Number 1, is your marriage strong? We would both say that it is. Number 2, in what ways? In our commitment to sharing life, thoughts, worries, aspirations, and simple joys and joking. In communicating and partnering to be on the same page in finances, parenting, beliefs, purchases, and scheduling. Since before having kids, we have kept a weekly lunch date in which we read books together on issues of faith and marriage, or in recent years, share anything positive or negative we are preoccupied by. We are willing to have difficult and vulnerable conversations with each other regarding relational and sexual issues, and have increasingly grown in our ability to be the first to confess our own contributions to problems. We give each other grace. Number 3, have you had previous marriages? No, neither of us. Number 4, what is the greatest adjustment you and your spouse have had to make toward each other? Learning to communicate both our thoughts and expectations, and figuring out how to find times of connection doing things we both reasonably enjoy together. And then next, we're out of those 4 questions. Let's see here. They said, if you're married, answer the next 4 questions. Were those 4 all under the heading of the first question? Maybe. Anyway, so that was under the heading C, if you are married, next 4 questions. I don't know. F still seems relevant to being married. Does your spouse support your desires in ministry? Yes, in a very wholehearted, striking, and humbling way. As I've shared with you guys, I think here they're asking probably your desires in ministry regarding the role of elder in this case. And I would say the same is certainly true of that. Yes, she supports my becoming an elder in a very wholehearted, striking, and humbling way, but that's also true of how she supports my ongoing ministry in work. So, does your spouse have any serious disagreement in any of the matters discussed in the doctrinal or philosophical section? No. What are some things that irritate you most about other people? I am rarely irritated by people unless they are talking in the movie theater, but I would say I am put off some by people who share their opinions on important issues without thought, wisdom, or substance. I also do not like other people's feet or the sound of them eating, despite being an apparently noisy eater myself. What is your relationship to each of your children like? Although my boys can both be very emotional at times, like their dad, they show a willingness and ability to listen and receive teaching and instruction on life from both me and Holly, and occasionally ask us questions about life as well in a way that indicates their trust in us as sources of knowledge and wisdom. We are very affectionate with each other, both verbally and physically. Humor and playful joking is a regular part of our interactions. We pray together each morning as a family and at meals, endeavoring to make prayer personal and custom to the day rather than formulaic. Although not currently, we go through spurts and seasons of doing things together, like playing video games and board games, or watching shows and movies together. Titus and I enjoy watching movies together more often. I probably spend a little more time with Titus because he requests it more often, where Asher, like me, is often content to be alone. I aspire to spend more time with them both, but find motivation difficult because I know I am already spending far more quality time with them and connecting over their hobbies than my parents did with me. I did want to insert just one thought here, just so there wasn't a misunderstanding. It's not a knock on my parents as far as like how much time that they spent with me. They were both having to work for much of the time that I was growing up, and I'm totally content with how much time that they spent with me. And I think that that's kind of like where that response is coming from. It's like, my boys, with both of us working from home, we don't have commute times. We have flexibility in our schedule. I don't feel like I turned out broken because of the lack of time that my parents spent with me. And so as a result, when I look at how much more time I've been able to spend with my boys than my parents were with me, I think they're getting plenty, And so that's where I kind of lack the motivation. But at the same time, I do see it as a problem because if I'm just comparing myself to what I experienced with my parents, then I'm falling into the trap of comparing myself to others, where we're always meant to be looking out on the horizon to where perfection is, the perfection of Christ, the perfection of the character of God. And I don't want to just compare myself to my parents and what I think they did fine with, but I want to look beyond that and say, what higher standard is there that Jesus could be presenting to me to be moving toward, So anyway, just to clarify where that comment was coming from. Let's see here. Jay, think about how your spouse and family or those close to you might describe you, and in each of the following contrasts, circle the word that is closest to how they would describe you. I wrote, I don't like this game, I want to explain, because they forced me to choose between two different words, and I'm like, don't box me into these words. The first one, demanding or flexible. I put demanding. I don't think that my spouse or family and those closest to me would describe me as demanding. I think that the word they would choose, that's something like that, maybe, would be particular. I can be very particular, but I really don't. I don't think I'm demanding. I just have particular preferences. Active or passive? I think active. Strict / understanding, or permissive. And I put strict / understanding. Communicative or withdrawn? And I highlighted communicative. And I mean, I'm certainly withdrawn in my personality in terms of like socially, I'm just content to be alone. But I mean, I think if there's something that needs to be communicated, I'm going to communicate it. And I think when I'm in a mode of conversing with somebody, communication, articulating my thoughts, drawing thoughts out of others as we're talking on a topic, I think that's an area of strength for me. I'm not one that is not, that you're going to have to try and pull my deep thoughts out of. I'm going to put them on the table. And then structured or spontaneous, I definitely highlighted structured there. Let's see. What baggage do you bring from your past? Depending on the definition, I'm not sure. But in probing my thoughts, I may have some baggage that contributes to my distrust of leadership, and perhaps even some hesitation to trust the elder board. It was very difficult for me to watch the direction the worship ministry took after I stepped down, which ultimately the elder board, it's their shepherding the philosophy of ministries and deciding who gets hired and what kind of directives they're going to give them and stuff like that. And so basically I stepped down from being a worship pastor in 2006, and then for a big stretch of years there was really hard to see what was happening with the worship ministry, and it seemed to be going in a direction that was different from what the elders and I had simultaneously from two different points come and said, wow, this is the vision, this is what we want worship at the church to be. And it seemed to be going in a different direction. I didn't understand why that was, but I didn't want to haunt that ministry. I wanted to just, not make it difficult for the person that was running the ministry. And so I just kind of like was hands off, and but it was hard. It was very hard for me, and especially being on the outside and not knowing anymore what was going on behind closed doors and how decisions were being made. And I could have actually, I think, at any time had a conversation with the pastors and the elders. But at that time, in the mid-2000s, mid to late aughts, I was just not wanting to be a pain. And so I really kept my distance, but it was difficult. And I didn't understand what was going on and why. And I did talk to the lead pastor when they were at kind of a crossroads and were about to hire someone new in that position. And so I talked to them and I expressed my concerns about where things had gone. And the lead pastor was very humble in saying, yeah, we that's on us. That's on us. We dropped the ball. And so I let me get back to my notes here and see where I can pick this up. I greatly respected the humility in that admission. At the same time, it made me concerned about the wisdom and judgment on the elder board at that time. However, in this particular case, hiring Jessica, who actually was my intern, she has now been the worship pastor at our church, I think, pretty sure longer than any worship pastor we've ever had now. And she's just been wonderful. She's been wonderful in that role. But anyway, in this particular case, hiring Jessica and the support she has been given has done a lot to win back my confidence. I am still generally slow to trust people, and even more slow to trust those with authority over me. This is probably because of a combination of my temperament, choices that those in authority over me have made in the past, judgment and criticism I have received from other Christians, and from family members related to my enjoyment of entertainment that they find questionable. Dungeons and Dragons, horror movies, etc. But I have tried to compensate for this in part by endeavoring to be as transparent and confessional as I can be, as early as I can be, to avoid the temptation to hide and protect parts of myself and allow those issues and concerns to surface in conversation. What is your financial state in general terms? Certainly comfortable. My wife is a pharmacist, which pays very well. I can't remember how much because I don't get along with numbers. Although I brought the gift of debt to our marriage, Holly brought the gifts of wisdom and a commitment to handling finances wisely. We have always lived on a budget and stayed out of debt apart from house and car payments, although we paid for our last car with cash and hope to do that again when the time comes. Although we discuss finances and agree on numbers for categories in our budget, my involvement is more at the philosophical level in those discussions. I credit Holly with every way in which our finances are under control and submitted to God. Oops, what is this? I don't know that number. Potential spam is calling me. Potential spam has been rejected. What are your giving habits? Okay, so I'm just going to be open with you guys on this. We give a little over 10% of our income with every paycheck. I don't remember more specifically. With almost all of that going to RMCC, our church, Red Mountain Community Church, and the rest going to various ministry organizations or the infrequent individuals we want to help. Describe your personal habits that keep you walking in the Spirit. My time devoted to regular meditation and prayer in Scripture has been vital, emotionally healing, restorative, and humbling. I also find this to a lesser degree with my time prepping to teach. Applying scriptural principles to disciplining my thought life has also been key in combating my tendency to worry by instead reaching for the truth of the Spirit. And meditating on both the perfection and grace of God has helped me remain humbly aware of my room left for growth and ridiculous need for Jesus. Briefly comment on your physical health. I exercise 2 to 5 times a week on average, with some seasons being better than others. In 2019 to 2020, I made significant changes to my eating habits and have been able to lose weight and mostly keep it off or at least under control. My health checkups show no causes for concern. What has been your stance and practice on sex outside the bounds of marriage and on homosexuality? My stance and practice has been that sexual fulfillment of any kind is meant to be limited to actions shared between a husband and wife. I believe that, like any sexual temptations outside of the marriage relationship, homosexual tendencies or inclinations are temptations rather than sinful in and of themselves, but that giving in to those temptations in thought life or action is sinful. Is there anything in your past that we should know up front could raise questions about your role in the ministry of Red Mountain Community Church? Ooh, I'll take a drink here to build up some suspense. All right, nothing here you guys probably couldn't guess. I think it's possible that my longtime enjoyment of entertainment genres, such as horror, that involve violent, supernatural, or otherwise disturbing elements, may raise questions among the more traditionally minded in the congregation. However, I would be prepared to have discussions with anyone about those concerns or refer them to video teaching content I have made on the topics, and believe there are strong biblical grounds for the freedom to enjoy such content with discernment and accountability. My online ministry work also involves ongoing biblical and topical teaching content that, while I don't believe is ever inconsistent with RMCC teaching, does at times express viewpoints that RMCC does not express particular views on. So it may be worthwhile to consider whether or not there may be assumptions or confusion about the positions of RMCC based on a viewpoint someone may hear me express in my ongoing content. All right, so that was all personal questions. Now leadership questions. This might be the last section here. Briefly describe a time when something blindsided you and what you learned through that experience. I thought it was interesting that this was categorized under leadership, but it makes sense. I have been blindsided multiple times while trying to discern God's will for the direction of my life. After spending 5 years in college preparing for a career as a professional Christian singer, I discovered over a period of mere months that I hated numerous things about pursuing that lifestyle and was a horrible fit for it. And of course, I was blindsided by how painful my time as a worship pastor became and how short that season of life ended up being compared to how long I thought it would be. In lesser but still significant ways, my course in life has been halted and forced to move in another direction multiple times. And from all of that, I have taken away the motto, chart a course, but keep a loose grip on the wheel, and have become more willing to see my life turn in directions I would not have planned or anticipated. What are some key experiences that taught you proper submission to others and to the Lord? I think being mentored by Dave Lindstrom has given me a number of... And Dave Lindstrom, if you are kind of new to my content, you don't know this, he was my Bible study mentor for 15 plus years. I can't remember how many more over 15, but about as long as I've, been running Spirit Led Productions, Christian Geek Central. We just ended that mentorship a little less than a year ago now. Wow, time flies. But it was it was in the spring of last year. But he was a founding elder on the elder board, and actually just this last December was done, and he aged out because he turned 65 last year. I think being mentored by Dave Lindstrom has given me a number of experiences submitting to the Lord, primarily in a willingness to change my view on something in light of Scripture and good reasoning. A notable instance was the decision to be baptized as an adult after being baptized as an infant. At the time, I wasn't entirely settled in my view on infant baptism, but chose to be baptized as an adult because I was persuaded enough by Scripture and reason and wanted to err toward obedience. A big turning point for me was when our boys were very young and demanding a lot of time and energy. I was being selfish with my time and priorities, but was unwilling to see it, making convenient mental comparisons of myself to others instead of to Jesus. When I saw how this was hurting Holly, I came to a breaking point where I was finally willing to stop comparing myself to others and face the perfection of Christ. This brought tears and repentance and the beginning of ongoing meditation on perfection that has made me more willing and ready to let go of what I think I'm entitled to and submit to my wife and to others. Who are some people you consult when you need deeper understanding? Dave Lindstrom, Alan Garcia, that's actually Jessica's husband, and Dave's son-in-law, because Jessica is Dave's daughter. But he and I, over the last 2 or 3 years, there was a year where we couldn't because he had a new job and things were changing like crazy. But we've been trying little by little to get back into a rhythm of meeting together. Now he's been on the elder board for 2 years plus 1 year is provisional. And so I don't know what kind of like if we'll still meet separately or not. But anyway, he's definitely become a guy who although he's about 10 years younger than me, he has biblical training that I don't. And so he's been valuable in that regard. So Dave Lindstrom, Alan Garcia, and on more rare occasions, Kyle or Bob Fox. Bob Fox, founding pastor of the church, was my former boss when I was on staff. And Kyle is his son and our current lead pastor. At other times, I will seek out individuals that I think have particular insight to a particular issue I am wanting to understand more. Just two more. How have you experienced Sabbath? Assuming Sabbath in this context refers to rest and restoration that honors God, that has come from at-home office retreats where I dedicate half a workday to prayer, worship, and meditation. I actually haven't done one of those in a while. I was just thinking, I think earlier this morning, I was like, should I do that? I don't want to do it just to do it because it's like a ritual or whatever. I want to do it, but I don't want to say just because it's a ritual or a tradition or whatever that makes it bad. Sometimes it's just good to have rhythms and disciplines in your life, and maybe it's time to not necessarily get back into the same rhythm that I'd been in before. But anyway, the thought occurred to me. It's like, I used to do those quarterly, and then I kind of eased off and, did like 3 times, 2 times a year, something like that. But it's been over a year since I've done one. And I'm wondering if maybe I should do another one before too long. Anyway, but that's something that for many years was something that I did. I've also found it Sabbath in corporate worship experiences, regular devotional times, and even in some recreational experiences without an explicit built-in focus on Yahweh. And then the last question, what has been your greatest frustration about your own spirituality? I find myself lacking contentment with what I perceive to be God's silence and distance. I am so prone to doubt and long for confident faith in the midst of my eventual experience of death, either dying myself or losing loved ones. Also, at times, I'm very moved by the way God orchestrates multiple unrelated events to speak to me, and at other times, I jadedly wish He was more than the God of coincidence in my life. I've identified my doubts as emotional and not based on actual conclusions I hold about God, but I wish I had greater emotional steadiness and confidence in the truth of God's promises. So, there you have it. That's the entire questionnaire. I don't know how much more I'll really have to say about the whole provisional elder thing, and when I have stuff to say, I might end up just sharing it with everybody on the podcast. I don't know. If you guys are particularly interested, you can let me know. But otherwise, I don't see it as directly relevant to my work with Spirit Blade Productions. I just kind of made an exception with this questionnaire because it was kind of a way for you guys to maybe get to know some parts of me and my thinking, my beliefs, my weaknesses, things like that normally wouldn't come up naturally. And then also because as I enter into this, I am considering, how it will impact my ministry. As I said last time, I think it's far more likely that it will be impacting it positively because it's going to stretch me and require growth from me, and a more spiritually mature Pater means a better Spirit Blade Productions and Christian Geek Central. So, but yeah, I don't plan on in particular updating you guys on anything unless there's stuff I hear from you want to know. But yeah, that's all I have to share for now. Thank you guys, as always, so much for your support. Really, really appreciate you. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.